Sending hugs over there.
You just get up and
Oh,
hug
no.
me.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I bring the illusion of professionalism, and I'm delighted that you could all join us here tonight. Thank you so much for being here. We're enormously excited because we are celebrating the climactic sixth book in David A. Robertson's Misewa Saga, The World's End. Before we begin, of course, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered here in Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Inuit, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, of course, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. It was something happened in 2020, I can't remember exactly what, but it prevented us from actually celebrating the first book in the Misewa Saga properly here at the store. We were so incredibly excited for the Barren Grounds when it was first announced and thrilled to get David behind a microphone, but sadly we had to celebrate virtually that year. From then on, we've celebrated all the books in the series, and we're so thrilled that we finally got into the sixth book, the culmination of Eli's adventures, and so pleased that you could be here with us to celebrate. I'm also keenly aware that I'm the last person you want to hear from tonight, so I'll be very fast. We could take an audience poll, it would be quite true. But yes, this series went from an up-and-coming series to one truly beloved by children, educators, and the obligatory readers of all ages, including pretty much everybody here on staff. So just to give you an idea of how this evening will go before I leave, there'll be a reading and a conversation over to my left. After that, there'll be an opportunity for you here in the audience to ask questions, so do allow those to start percolating in your brains. When it comes time for the questions, I'll walk around with this microphone just to make sure that our friends watching at home can hear your questions as well. At the end of the event, I'll be back with some very exciting words about signing procedure. But for now, I have the great pleasure of introducing both her host and our featured author. I would imagine all of you will be familiar with the insight, wisdom, incomparable wit, and unmistakable voice of our host, Rosanna Deerchild. Rosanna has been storytelling for more than 20 years, currently as host of CBC Radio 1's Unreserved, a show that shares Indigenous community culture and conversation. She has also developed and hosted This Place, a podcast series for CBC Books around the Indigenous anthology, This Place, 150 Years Retold. Her debut poetry collection, This is a Small Northern Town, won the 2009 Aqua Books Lansdowne Prize for Poetry. Her second book, Calling Down the Sky, which is forthcoming in a beautiful looking 10th anniversary edition, is her mother's residential school survivor story. Her most recent collection, She Falls Again, was published in fall of 2024. A Cree from Opiponapuan Cree Nation at South Indian Lake in northern Manitoba, Rosanna now very thankfully lives here in Winnipeg in her found home. Our special guest this evening, David A. Robertson, is the author of numerous books for young readers, including Governor General's Literary Award winners On the Trapline and When We Were Alone. The Barren Grounds, book one of the Misewa Saga series, was a Kirkus, MBR, and Quill and Choir Best Middle Grade Book of 2020, as well as a US BBY and Texas Lone Star selection. Winner of the Writers Union of Canada's Freedom to Read Award, as well as the 2021 Globe and Mail Children's Storyteller of the Year recipient. Dave is a member of Norway House Cree Nation, currently lives in Winnipeg, and you are now legally obliged to give them both a raucously wild welcome.
You have to add to that bio, and they both have 2 documents. But still, we're just
Doctor, do you
we're just
just
comparing
surprised you didn't wear your robes?
doctor. I was considering it. I didn't want to outshine you.
John already did that.
That's right. He's got his new little
Sultry.
man bun there. Did you see that?
I know.
Man bun action. That's new. I
Yeah.
like it. It's working.
I like it
for you,
too.
John.
What are we talking about?
Oh, yeah, hey, when did you guys get here? We're just chatting away, visiting. It's been a while. Always nice to see you. But let's focus here.
Okay.
Focusing.
Okay, ready. Oh, do you want me to read?
Yeah,
Okay.
you gotta do the reading part.
Okay. Do I need to introduce it? Maybe a little bit. I'm going to be reading from a third of the way through, maybe. This series is it's appropriately compared to Narnia often, which was deliberate. But each book in the series is actually based on a traditional story, Cree stories of the sky and the stars. And the last 3 books are based on a Cree story, which is called Grandmother Spider and the Star Woman. But within those stories, there's also other little stories. And it has layers, like an onion. Anyway, and so there's one story that I've liked for quite some time, a traditional story of Wisikajak, who's a Cree trickster. And the story explains how Cree people have no bum. And it's a true, I mean, it's a true story that we don't, but it's also a real traditional story. And Wisikajak is a character in the book, and I just thought it would be really kind of fun to have him tell his own story in the book. And so all I wanted to do is, it has really nothing to do with the plot, but it was fun to do this. And so I want to read you this section of where Wisikajak leads up to telling his own story about how his bum became burned off. It's still a middle grade book. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Sure, WJ. WJ's on his belt buckle. What does that stand for? Whiskey Jack? Eli asked. Yep, I'm being cheeky, they said. Humans like to call me that instead of my actual name, Wisikajak. This shows that their words don't bother me because I'm quite comfortable with who I am. You don't say, Eric quipped. Cheeky is an interesting choice of words, by the way. Harumph, Wisikajak said, crossing their arms. If that's your rude way of referring to my basically non-existent bum, I assure you, I'm not even self-conscious about that. Yeah, maybe you should tighten your belt up by a notch, Emily said, or 2. You two, Wisikajak said, pointing at Eli and Morgan, should turn around so I can see whether or not you have bums any bigger than mine. At least we didn't eat our bums, Eli said. I'm sorry, what? Emily asked. Yeah, this I need to hear more about, Morgan said. Wisikajak looked in the direction of Misewa, then back. Muskwa, this is a spoiler alert, I'm gonna pass by that sentence. Okay, there we go. Thank you. They put their hand on Eric's shoulder. Do you want to take this one? Oh no, Eric said. Please, feel free. You do like to tell stories, don't you? Very well, Wisikajak said. Although, let me say, this isn't my proudest moment. However, I'm so hungry right now that I might well have done the same thing again if I hadn't already done it before. The anticipation just gets better and better, Emily said. The group set off across the flatlands and shortly arrived at World's End. Once there, they found a place between the barren landscape and the forest where the grass was shorter and they sat in a circle. A long time ago, I was very hungry. Wisikajak's stomach grumbled as if trying to support his story with sound effects. Sometimes I like to hunt for my own food, even though often I have animal beings do it for me. But there's something about catching your own food, you know? So I went out with my trusty bow and arrow. Now, normally, as my old friend Eric Watches here can attest, I am an excellent shot. I rarely miss when I'm aiming at an animal. Eric sadly shook her head without the spirit being noticing. I was getting rather upset with my bum, however, because whenever I was ready to shoot an arrow, when my lunch was right there and waiting to be caught, it would fart. Of course, when my bum farted, it would scare off the game. And then I would have to find another rabbit or some other animal. And as soon as I did and I was ready to launch another arrow, there would be my bum farting again. After trying many times, I thought about how I might punish it so it would know to stop farting. So I decided that I would burn it to teach it a lesson. Wait, Emily said. You burned your own bum because it was farting. I made a great big fire, and when it was burning hot, I placed a large stone in the middle of it and waited until it was glowing white. Then I sat on it. Wisikajak winced at the memory. Needless to say, I was in quite a lot of pain. So I ran from the fire to the river and stuck my bum into the water, and that cooled it off satisfactorily. I said to my bum, that should teach you, bum. And then I went on my way to catch food without my bum's interfering farts. I walked and walked deep into the woods, and as I walked, scabs formed on my bum. I healed quickly, you see. Scabs formed, and then they started to fall away onto the ground. Mind you, I didn't notice at the time. I had an unsuccessful hunt, despite there being no more flatulence. I was on my way, no one's gonna wanna buy this book after a minute.
No, they're gonna want
I was on my way home when I saw all these scabs on the path. The scabs looked like meat to me. In fact, they looked like the meat my cooking would prepare. So I ate every single one of the scabs because I was utterly famished. As I was finishing the last scab, animals that had eluded me while I was hunting came right up to me laughing. They wouldn't stop laughing. I asked, "What are you laughing at, Mrs. Skoak?" And they said to me, "Dear Wissikajak, you're so silly. You've been eating the scabs from your own bum." I was so ashamed that I ran off and stayed hungry that day. My bum had burned off. It was just the worst day you could ever imagine. Emily's stomach had been grumbling earlier from hunger, but now it was her turn to vomit. As soon as the story was over, she turned her head and puked up whatever was in her stomach right into the grass. Then she turned back around, wiped her mouth, and stated calmly, as if nothing had happened, "Okay, so you ate your own bum, pretty much. That's cool." Something did taste off about my Cookham's jerky, come to think of it, Wissikajak said. I should have known better than to think there'd be meat just sitting there for me in the middle of the woods. "Can we maybe just change the subject?" Morgan asked, rubbing Emily's back. "I agree with that suggestion," Eric said. "I've heard that story many times, and each time it's funny, but it's also disgusting." "Maybe we should start walking again," Eli said. "It's still a long way to Misewa." "I totally agree with all of you," Wissikajak said. "But first, I think we should eat." There's probably nothing to do with the novel itself.
Hungry? Raisins, anyone? Thank you for that. That was
You're welcome.
that was interesting and lovely.
Just
As
beautiful
you,
writing.
it was beautiful
Yeah,
writing,
thank you.
poetic. I
Thank
never,
you. No.
as you were reading, David, I was looking out at the reactions of the
I
kids.
wasn't. But
Both older kids and younger kids, and they
Yeah.
were really just leaning in.
there you go. Yeah.
I think this kid over there was actually gonna throw up when he got to the scab part, because it's very disturbing. Is that, this might be a silly question, seeing the reaction of the younger kids here as you were reading,
Mhm.
completely enthralled. So why did you want to write create this beautiful world,
The whole thing.
the whole thing?
Well, I think, like, for me, in writing this whole series from book 1 to book 6, it was a vehicle for me to be able to talk about things I felt were important, and things that you can. I think it's showing myself, and maybe people in general, that kids are able to digest and understand complex ideas and serious subjects, and you can do that all within this very kind of humorous construct, and this very traditional construct, and so, like, this series has been a way for me to address a lot of really important historical and societal issues, and then in this book, even though it has funny moments like that, it also does the same thing. Like within the storytelling of every single book in the series, you talk about environmental protection and land stewardship, talk about foster care system, throughout all 6 books, and you talk about colonialism, stealing of land and resources, and then you also the last 3 books very overtly focus on the Beothuk people on the eastern coast of Canada, and how they were completely wiped out by settlers constructing towns like St. John's on the coast and cutting them off from their food sources. And so this world was a way for me to construct this really lively and beautiful landscape that showcased, you know, our traditional ways of living and the ways in which we're doing quite well in how we lived, and then how those ways were disrupted by, you know, settler colonialism. And so there's a lot of really important teachings in here, but it's also happens within this kind of fantastical world. And I think the blending of fantasy and real world issues is not new, but I think it's an incredible vehicle to use to address things that I think a lot of people, if not everybody, should be aware of and learn about.
Yeah. You started this journey, literal and figuratively, in 2018. First book came out 2020. This is your sixth and final book. How do you feel about, you know, concluding the series, the saga?
Well, it's kind of been like two endings actually, because I guess first of all, the endings, like the Stone Child was supposed to be the end of the series. It was supposed to be a trilogy. That's how I pitched it, as a trilogy. And then the Barren Grounds, it kind of like took off on us, and we didn't really anticipate how popular the Barren Grounds was going to be. I think it like spent probably 5 years straight on the bestseller list, and that was, you know, it's very rare. You know, what would be like I Love You Forever is on there and all the time, and The Marrow Thieves is on there all the time,
It's
and
become a classic.
well, I don't want to say that, but like I
I'm
definitely
saying it
think
because
that
I know you want to stay humble.
well, it's a combination of, like, you know, I think it's a good story, but it's also timing, it's also, you know, relevance, and you know, kids really connected with it, which is great. But it was supposed to be a trilogy, and then because the Barren Grounds did so well, we discussed extending it. And I didn't want to do that unless I had an idea to do it properly. And then when I figured it out, to switch to Eli's perspective and to talk about his journey and his background, and which I had all drawn out in the character outlines, I felt like that would be a really cool way to extend it to 6 books. My worry with the 6th book, maybe not worry, but my concern with it, maybe that's a synonym, but anyway, was to make sure that I ended the series in a good way that would be satisfying, but would also, like, I learned a lot about how to write finales and how not to write finales, actually, from watching television, and so I wanted to do it like in a good way, and not like, you know, like the first or second Dexter finale, which was, you know, terrible, but to do it more like this is not at all a good comp for this, but like, you know, the Breaking Bad finale, which is like, you know, incredible, or Reservation Dogs probably is more accurate, an incredible finale. So like, to do it in a good way, not in a way that people would be let down or feel like, oh, that's the end. This is a really letdown. So, but I feel good about it. I feel good about the book. I feel good about how it ends, and I feel good about the whole series. I mean, really, the Barren Grounds and the Misewa Saga series changed my life, you know, and I'm really grateful for that. And what I'm more grateful for is how I get to go to schools across Canada and walk into schools and see, like, you know, walls of the school filled with, like, you know, kids drawing characters from the Barren Grounds, or, you know, I walked into the atrium, I think it was in Lethbridge maybe, and there's like tables full of dioramas that people made of the Barren Grounds and the North Country, and people have made like Minecraft worlds of the North, and I never expected any of this to happen. It's been very surreal. It's been really cool, but also it's also been like, is this really happening with this? You know, so that's been, but it's been a really amazing journey, and it's a little bittersweet for it to be over. But I think the cool thing about it too is that when you write characters that people really connect to, and you let them go when you finish that book, I feel like they live on with the readers, and I think that is also a comforting thought, that their lives continue on in the readers, and if that's how their lives continue, the stories continue, that's pretty satisfying for me.
Yeah, I love that, little dioramas and like,
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Worlds. That's so cool.
Yeah, and board games too.
And board games.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Jean-Luc Picard Day on Star Trek.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a Star Wars guy, so I don't know.
Okay, I'm out of here.
I thought all Indigenous writers were Star Wars fans.
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Place to
I've
be.
never heard that
Star
before.
Trek. Thank you. Shh, Star Wars. Hey, you get out of here. Look, he's got a Star Wars t-shirt on, Empire Strikes Back. He's got a mic that, this is great. You were saying that it was surprising to you, the reaction, particularly like your first book came out in 2020 at the start of the, you know, the time we don't name.
We can't name it. You know, it's interesting because like, you know, when COVID hit, but like, you know, when COVID happened, it felt in some ways that that's where books were going to die because we couldn't do anything really in person to promote literature. And I was worried about the Barangans kind of being lost in the shuffle of the pandemic. And I remember even when I was working on The Great Bear, I had a scene where all the kids were like gathering around for like a fight that was going to happen. And I remember thinking, do I write them with masks on? What do I do with this?
Yeah,
you know, and I decided to make the decision. I made the decision that I was going to ignore the pandemic was even happening in my world. And so I made all the kids just like gather around and not wear masks. I thought that was almost cathartic in a way, but yeah, it was definitely a nerve-wracking time. And I think I had 3 books or 4 books come out that year. I was really worried about all of them because of the fact that we couldn't gather, we couldn't like come together face to face. We had so many virtual things happening, and now it's like virtual meetings and presentations are like a commonplace, and it's I think it's been actually instructive for us to see in different ways that we can connect, but it was definitely a worry at the time.
Mm-hmm. Because lots of people, like, what else were they going to do? They started listening to music again. They started watching movies. They started reading books. It was a really interesting time.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, in some ways, I wish that we could go back to some of that without taking the illnesses. But we did a lot of things that I think we should do more of now, like go outside and like go for walks and read and things like that. And I think now it's like, my dad would always talk about balance. I think it's like finding balance, I think, is important.
Absolutely. When you started the series and you had, the original arc, you must have had like a vision of how that was going to go, and then you had to extend it to 6. Did anything surprise you during that, that journey as you were creating?
Not really. I think so it almost, it is one continuous story. But how I was able to section it off was the first 3 books are really Morgan's story. And Morgan does have a really, I think, clear arc in her growth. And I always wanted her growth to end at book 3 in terms of like her character development. There's a lot of things I wanted to do with that character. And I had a vision for how I wanted that arc to end. And talk about a lot about, at least I do, earned moments in literature. And the moment at the end, I don't want to give any spoilers if you haven't read the Stone Child, but my favorite book is the Stone Child in the series, and my favorite scene is in the Stone Child at the end of the book with Morgan and then a person that she meets. And that scene is, I think, one of the best things I've written, and I love it so much. And it was such an earned moment. For like 3 books, you lead to that one moment, and the reader, I always imagine reading it, feeling just such a sense of like relief and satisfaction in that happening. And then I didn't want to mess with that development. And so the decision was to switch to Eli. There's so much more I wanted to talk to the readers about in terms of Eli's journey. And at that time, when the Portal Keeper came out, which is the 4th book, I was getting pretty heavy into mental health advocacy. And I wanted Eli to be, in a lot of ways, embody mental health struggles. And so Eli, the last 3 books are about Eli's acceptance of and honing of the skills and power that he has. And an interesting way for me in following his journey in the last 3 books was to talk about how he controls his power by controlling his panic. And so, initially he opens portals through panic and anxiety. And he is able to control that power by learning how to deep breathe and learning how to kind of quell the panic and focus it. And I think that was, again, this book is about a lot of things. And I feel like in talking about mental health through this book, it is also instructive for youth to know how they might be able to deal with their panic or anxiety, because kids deal with anxiety as much as adults do. And I think that it's kind of an underserved topic in literature for youth, and I think it's important. And I get the privilege of going across Canada and meeting kids all over this place, from coast to coast to coast, and I know that kids are going through anxiety. I know that they have mental health struggles, and and letting them know that it's okay, and letting them know that these are some ways that you can deal with it, short of as well, like talking to an adult, I think is a really worthwhile thing to do. And that was a big focus of the last 3 books as well, as Eli is going through his own mental health struggles. And then he learns how to live with them more effectively and actually use them as a superpower, which I think is a pretty cool thing to do and a pretty cool message for a kid.
Absolutely. Speaking of, if anybody here has any questions for the author, please stick up your hand and we'll fit you in there. Maybe the young kids. You look like you have a question brimming in your brain right now. Yeah, no, not yet. You're ready. She's going to be next.
What caused you to get inspiration to write your books?
Well, it's a great question. I give a lot of credit actually to a Cree astronomer, a Cree scientist named Wilfred Buck. And Wilfred Buck has done and continues to do a lot of great work in documenting and telling sky stories. And so him and like Murdo Scribe, who is actually as well from Norway House Cree Nation, they have all of these different stories about the constellations. And when I started, and I worked at MFNRC, the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Center, which Wilfred also worked for. And I got direct access into a lot of his work through publishing his initial collection of stories. And reading through it, they really struck me. And they had the kind of the beauty of Indigenous storytelling woven within them, but they also had incredible messages. And one of my favorites was Ochagosagosag, which is the Fisher Star constellation story, which is the Big Dipper. And that story was always something that connected with me so strongly. I actually adapted it in a couple different ways initially. I wrote it as a picture book for my work. And then I also, I think I wrote a comic version of it, a 10-page comic version of it for an anthology, which I don't remember the name of, but it was a different version because there's so many different iterations of it as well. And eventually I wanted to document it in my own way, which became the Barren Grounds. But there's so many different stories of this constellations, and picking them was this real joy because I got to read through like 10, 15, 20 different constellation stories and figure out which ones I wanted to adapt and tell in my own way. And in that, not lose the message of the stories. And so that's really where, that was the fruit, the kind of seed of the Barren Grounds and the Misewa Saga in its entirety, was looking at these traditional stories and wanting to share them with everybody, because I think they do have something to offer for everybody. Even though it is like, you know, a Cree traditional story, I think our stories have value for anybody who listens to them or reads them.
This young lady over here had a question.
How did you come up with the groundlings?
Tremors, but you wouldn't know. So
Before your time.
So each, like the first 3 books in the series definitely has like a certain vibe to them, and I wanted them to feel like distinct, but as much as I wanted them to be a continual story. And weaving that all together was a challenge. And I really like challenging myself for the stories that I write. The Barren Grounds is very much Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe vibe. Like it was, you know, that, and that's why I sold the book to Tundra. I told them I want to write like an Indigenous Narnia, and it was like, there's all the money, here's the contract.
Take our money.
You know, and so not really, but that's not how it works. But they were really excited about it.
That's totally true.
Kind of is. And then, so then for The Great Bear, which is the second book, I really wanted it to be like a little bit like Back to the Future. And so, the Great Bear is very much me extolling my love for time travel stories. And The Great Bear is very cool because a lot of it actually causes the Barren Grounds to happen because it happens before the Barren Grounds. And then the Stone Child was kind of like my Sleepy Hollow. It was very much like my horror story of the series. And a lot of the atmosphere in the Stone Child I based on like Tim Burton stories. And then I wanted something in that book to be really terrifying and something that would scare me too. And so when I was a kid, my brothers are here, they would remember this too, I think. There was a movie we watched called Tremors with Kevin Bacon, I think is in it, right? And then so they had these like really scary monsters that come from under the earth. And then you never know really where they are, except for you see this like would be this like line of earth being like torn up behind them as they come towards you. I thought that was like super terrifying. And so I had this idea of just like making them a little bit smaller, but all over the place. And they kind of jump at you from everywhere. And you have to like kind of figure out how to survive through these attacks. And then it enabled me as well to bring back a character I really loved that I initially killed. And I won't tell you who it is, or you probably know. And so I got to play a lot with horror tropes, and then a really creepy atmosphere. And so that's kind of where the groundlings came from. I was like, what kind of like the scariest creature I can think of? It was almost like a mix of like Tremors and then like kind of vampires and like putting them all together in one. And that was how I figured out how to write groundlings. The groundlings actually come back again later in the series. And there's one spin-off graphic novel that's coming out next year based in the Misewa world, which is the origin of the bird warriors. And I was able to also actually illustrate. I didn't illustrate it, but I was working with an illustrator who brought the groundlings to life on paper, so you get to see them in panels in a comic book. I think that's coming out later next year.
Advertising. Ad alert.
And that one's based on Kill Bill. That's actually true.
Did anybody else have another question?
So you're saying that you have the graphic novel coming out and the groundlings are going to be in it. You work with an illustrator. So is this your vision of what they look like?
This is my vision of what they look like based on consultation with the illustrator to see how we can kind of realize it so that they would be. Because the one thing I was really concerned with, and I think this is true of anything that you have on paper and literature, and then you try to realize in some way visually, there is a risk of not representing them as you want them to be represented in your head. And so there's a lot of consultation of like what we wanted things to look like on paper in art form, because I don't want to present characters that don't fit into the reader's imagination of what they might be. So that was what we worked really hard on, was to make sure that the groundlings were as terrifying as I wanted them to be, as well as like the lizards that come back in that graphic novel. A lot of you haven't read most of the series. There's like these really terrifying, kind of like really nasty lizard characters later in the series as well. So we bring them all back for the graphic novel, and it's a pretty cool story. But it was difficult to figure out how to draw them properly. I don't have to draw them, but someone's going to draw them properly and do justice to the characters as they're written. And we have a really great illustrator working on them. And the illustrations are almost done now. It looks fantastic, and so I'm really happy with how it's turned out. But I think it's coming out fall or summer next year.
Exciting. I guess that answers the question I was going to ask next, which is, this is of course billed as the last of the novel series.
Yeah.
Clearly you have more plans for the Misewa world, which is very cool. Because 7 is a sacred number, just saying.
Well, it's interesting how many people have asked me about, like, is really the final book? And it is really the final book. I think it would take a lot for me to want to write a 7th. I have an idea for a 7th, which I kind of hidden in the map on the beginning of the book 6, but I only will do it if I think it really fits and I can write it as well as the other ones, and people really want it, and I think that's the mistake that people make when they create series, whether it's in literature or whether it's on film or whether it's in television, is they go on too long. And I wanted this series to end in a good place where it felt like it ended in a logical moment. And I think it does that in The World's End. And I think extending it would have to take something very special. And I'm not sure if I'll do that or not. I also have a lot of books I have to work on the next 3 or 4 years, which maybe won't allow me to do that. But the idea is there if I want it to be a 7th book.
Yeah, I think Darth Vader here had a question. No?
We do have a question that was.
I just wanted to say Darth Vader had a question.
Did Darth Vader ask questions? I think it tells people what they want.
That's right.
I am going to clumsily alter some technology.
You know who does ask questions? Jean-Luc Picard. That's who asks questions.
He says, like, what does he tell Riker to, like, go places? I don't know.
Number 1. I'd like to see you in my ready room. Sorry, John, go ahead.
I appreciate it.
Toshi station to find some power converters, which is kind of anyway.
And on that note, we have a question from Martin. And I will make sure that there is volume for it.
Yeah, that'd be good.
This is all untested technology, so thank you all for your patience. Nobody talked to this.
Pardon.
No, that's not what I'm doing. Sorry.
If this guy is ready to come help you out, he's probably got it worked out already.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. So what we are going to do is mute that. And we're just going to play this not on Zoom.
Okay.
And Arden, if you're watching, we will put your video into this feed later on.
We'll fix it and post it.
Absolutely. Does anyone have a question that they might like to ask while I?
No, we just want to stare at you when you're right?
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
And no.
Yeah, no?
Sorry, I don't know why
There's
this
a
is
question back there. We could.
We had a question in the back over there.
Okay, let's go to this person. Oh,
In the back with the crutches.
So I'm curious if the books are going to be adapted into movie form.
Oh, look at these excited faces. Oh my goodness.
It's a complicated answer. So I don't know how much I can say about this. They were optioned. So we were approached by I don't know if I can say who it is. I'll screw it. We're approached by we're approached by Charlize Theron's production company, which is Denver and Delilah. And then they ended up working with ABC Signature, which is a Disney company, and they optioned the series, and so that was how it was going to go for a little bit, and I was really excited about it, obviously. And then it actually went pretty far. They had a head writer who was a pretty well-known actor, and they signed a first look deal with Netflix. When they did that, Disney dropped out because Netflix was the one they had to bring it to because of this deal this person had written. And so Denver and Delilah picked up the shop agreement for it. And shop agreement means that they can shop it to different networks to see if they want to pick it up to produce it. And they had a treatment done for the first season, and it was going to be a television series. And then I think the production company ended up going in a different direction in terms of their projects in general. And then dropped the option on the Misewa Saga series in the process. And so now the option is open on it. And so I hope it gets made at some point. I think it will eventually. But there's some, not problems, but there's some, I think there's probably cost issues because you'd have to do it with a lot of CGI, I would think. Although, because I like old school stuff, I was sick last week, like 2 weeks ago or so. I missed the launch here with Steph and Sarah and Nigon, and for an amazing anthology called You Were Made for This World, and Tasha Spillett. And so when I was sick, I was watching old 80s movies again, and I watched Labyrinth over again and Dark Crystal. I would love, and it probably will never happen because it's like we don't do stuff. I mean, we don't do stuff old ways anymore, although I wish we did in certain ways. But I would love for it to be like practical effects, like Muppets, like puppetry, and do it like Dark Crystal Labyrinth style. That would be pretty cool for me to see that. I don't know if that would be cool for someone to make it. I don't know if they'd see the money in that, but that's how I would like to see it realized. But I have no say. Like zero whatsoever. So I hope it gets made at some point. But at this point, anybody could pick it up to option it because it's open on it. So hopefully one day, but we don't know when.
And thank you all for putting up with
You
my
figured it out?
sweat. I think I have.
Okay.
Yay.
Okay, so ideally, we should be hearing from Art.
I'm Mark. 2 years ago, I emailed Dave about resources for Indigenous kids, and I've been a reader of the series for a long time. My question for you is to give me your 2 stars and a wish of your career. If you don't, that means basically it's just you say 2 things you're really proud of and happy with, and 1 hope for the future. Anyways, great book. I loved it.
That's Arden. Arden has come to a lot of my events over the course of the years since the Barren Grounds came out. Arden at one point, just to tell you a bit of a backstory, and one of the most lovely kids told me at one point that she had discovered Cree roots, or she was Cree, and we were talking about getting in touch with culture, and I think she connected to Morgan quite well because of that. And I sent her a Cree language book, and it was so we've stayed in touch, and amazing kid. So those questions, that's a great question. I think it was like 2 wishes and 2 stars and a wish for my career, I think I heard. So I don't like talking about my accomplishments. I don't, so I think what I'm most proud of probably in my career so far is that my books have been able to connect with a lot of schools over the course of the last 15 years. And I really am proud of how they've helped teachers to teach kids, I think, really important things. And so I think, like, in terms of its use in the education system, I'm quite proud of that. And I feel like that the relationship I've been able to develop with teachers across Canada has been very special for me. And some of my favorite people and some of my favorite events to do are in classrooms and in conferences, education conferences. And so that means a lot to me. The series itself, and the Misewa Saga series, is obviously a series that, I mean, this book and When We Were Alone are probably books that really are most important books in my career. They really made my career in a lot of ways. And so the emails I get from teachers, or I'm able to speak to teachers in person and hear stories about how kids have gotten excited about reading because of the Barren Grounds, is very special to me, and that really means a lot. And I don't really know how to process that, but I'm really happy that the book has gotten kids excited to read, because reading is so important. We learn so much from it, and if you want to really prepare kids to do well, just as in terms of leadership and change making, just let them read a lot of books all the time, and they're going to grow up to be ready to take on the challenges that we've given them by inheriting the mess that we've made. And I think kids are really ready to do good things and do better things than we've done. So I'm really happy to have any sort of a role in that. I guess, like, a wish for my career, I don't know, like, I'm happy with where I'm at. I think that I just want to keep making books that I feel like matter and are meaningful, and find topics that I think are important and try to strive for excellence all the time. And one of the things I'm most proud of in my career, maybe beyond those things, is that I've been able to take on different forms and genres of literature and do well at them, because I work very hard. And I want to continue to work hard and to write stories that matter. And I'll always write stories that I think have messages in them that matter. And I think that's a wish that I have, is just to keep doing what I'm doing and hopefully keep doing it well, I think would be probably my answer for that.
All right.
Perfect. And we now, I believe I have fixed this cord that seems to be broken, and we should be able to hear a question from River.
River.
Hi, my name is River Lamar, and I started reading the Misewa Saga series when I was 7 years old, and I am now almost 11 years old. It was so special to me when I first met David A. Robertson. I was super shy, but excited at the same time. I like the Misewa Saga series because it was fiction and fantasies, and those are genres that I like. I like how the animal beings and the humans collaborate together to save the land of ASCII. They go on adventures to save the land of ASCII. And and protect the other animal beings and each other. These are just some aspects of the series that I like. My questions for you are, when did you start making the Misewa Saga series? Was it hard to choose which Indigenous star stories to include in the series? And how did you choose which star stories to include in the series? Thank you for inviting me to share and ask these questions. Your books have changed my life.
Oh, I love that.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, yeah, so River is a very special kid to me as well. I met River several years ago, and they're amazing. And being able to keep in touch with River and River's family. And I just spent time with River and their mom in Guelph just recently. And I gave River a set of this entire series. And so it's a very important kid to me. And I don't know how to answer that. I'm just, I guess, so, I mean, you've heard a lot about, I thought of the series probably 2018, 2017. And that's when I kind of started to realize that the plan for the series and the trilogy initially. And what was the second part of that? How did I choose? Yeah, great. So, I chose the stories because I think, first of all, they carried the best message with them for me and what I wanted to do. So like Great Bear, for example, is an anti-bullying book. And you know, the Barren Grounds is very much like an environmental protection, like climate change book. And those are really important things for me. And so I connected personally with those. And so I chose really just my favorite three initially. And the other one was the creation of the Sweat Lodge. And so the story it's Corona Borealis, which is Matutism, or the Sweat Lodge constellation. And I wanted to find a way to weave those all in together into a narrative. And I like the challenge of doing that and figuring out how to do that while not losing the messages of the stories that I really love. And then as I was working on the third book, we decided to extend it into the 6 books. And I just love this one story that Wilford told on YouTube. I originally saw it, talking about Grandmother Spider and the Star Woman. And I thought that is such a cool story. How can I incorporate the Star People and the Star World to make it like another world in this fantasy series and connect it all together? And I did have an idea about Eli's very unique heritage, and that being a way at which I could draw in the Star World into the book and then tell that story through the last 3 books of the series. So that's kind of how I chose to use, why I chose the 4, I guess, Star Wars stories that I chose and Sky stories for the Misewa Saga series. Thank you, River and Arden.
Those are great questions. I love that. Mr. Darth Vader?
Sure, has a name too.
How many schools have you been to?
Oh, what's your name?
No, it's Darth Vader.
Cooper?
What's your name? Stella? Okay. What was your name? Sarah, okay. So Cooper, I don't know, because I probably visit like 50 to 75 or more schools a year, I would guess. And that's probably on the low end. And that's what either physically or virtually. So I don't know how many schools I've visited since I started doing this work about 15 years ago. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds would be probably accurate, but very unsatisfying answer. But I definitely recognize schools when I go back to them. But I've been to a lot. I've met probably tens of thousands of kids over the course of the last several years. And that's where I get the most joy too, is meeting kids and being able to interact with kids and talking to kids and of all ages. And it's what I value most in my career is being able to go to schools and meet teachers and to talk to kids.
I might have time for one more question. Back.
So first off, Wilfred has a planetarium show at the Manitoba Museum. There's a series based on his star story. So I encourage anyone who's curious about the stories to check that out. And it's told in Wilfred's own voice. You were mentioning about Vince Gilligan and the idea for Breaking Bad and having an ending. It sounds like maybe this is like the 3 books after are your Better Call Saul. Like it's allowing you to explore the same universe, but like not the star of the first part.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and it's funny that it's funny to think about Misewa Saga in relation to like a series like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. But I actually am very inspired by the structure of and storytelling methods of different writers and directors, and I think that Breaking Bad is actually almost a perfect series, and so is Better Call Saul. It's arguably maybe even equal to Breaking Bad. And I love a series like Lost, which definitely has its flaws, but there are probably some like little lost elements in the Misewa Saga series as well. And I always love time travel, so I take a lot of inspiration from different time travel stories and movies that I've watched or read over the years. I think writing in itself is a practice of weaving together different inspirations and making it somehow, first of all, work, but being able to do it in your own voice. And I think I'm at the point in my career now where I think you can read a book and feel like it reads like a David Robertson book, and I think I'm really proud of that. But definitely that voice is a culmination of all these different inspirations, all these different people and writers I've learned from, series that I've learned from, and how to execute a series and how to do it properly, and just learning from the best. And I always say I strive to be the best that I can be. And I want to be the best writer out there. I probably won't ever be. But I think a good lesson I give to kids all the time when I give like writing workshops is to say, if you're not trying to be the best, you're not trying hard enough. You're never going to be the best that you can be. And that's what I try to be in my writing as well, is to be the best that I can be. So like, writers like Miriam Toews and, Thomas King and Douglas Copeland and Ernest Hemingway and J.D. Salinger and C.S. Lewis, and like they're all writers I read a lot because I want to learn from to get better myself. And the better I am at what I do, the more effective my stories are for the goals I have for my work and the messages that I want kids in particular, but adults to draw from the books that I create and put out there into the world.
And with that, I think we'll call for the man behind the wall. Totally rhymed. I didn't even mean that.
I like John as just a like disembodied voice. I always feel like I want John to come and just sit by my bed and read me a story. I'll just like fall asleep. Like I just don't even just like medicine. John, just like.
But first, a big round of applause
for John.
That would be good because it would prevent me from having to hide in your bushes all the time. So thank you all so very much for being here tonight.
It's dark moments in this life.
We are thrilled you could be here tonight for the launch of The World's End. Huge thanks to Rosanna Deerchild for guiding us through this conversation. We will now move along to the signing portion. So in just a moment, we will place David in this chair here, and you can all line up along this way and get copies of any books you might like signed. If there's one of David's books that is not on this table that you want, just flag me down and I'll get it for you, and I'll continue to replenish these piles as the signing goes along. Feel free to get a book signed before you pay for it. Just visit my friends at the cash desk before you leave, please. Thank you so much to Tundra Books for publishing this whole series and for helping us to put this evening together. Thank you to thank you all of you for all your questions, your attention, and for being here tonight to celebrate with us. Please join me one more time in giving a very warm round of applause to David.